The Minnesota Vikings have been around since 1961. And I just want them to win a damn Super Bowl before I die. Welcome to Before I Die with Judd and Jesse on Purple Daily and Score North.
Just one, you guys, just one before I die. I mean, as Judd has mentioned on previous shows, he's getting close to probably meeting his end. So really, we're in an expedited state here. I'm Jesse Pierce from NHL.com, Bar Down Beauties, and Judd's Hockey Show, amongst many other things. Also, new Bev Cart girl out at a local golf course. Good, exciting.
So that's legit. You weren't kidding. I thought you were like half joking about that. That's an actual thing.
We're doing that. We're gonna close out the season being a Bev Cart girl. It's gonna be great. My dad never let me do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing as Declan. I thought
it was a joke. Yeah.
Nope, it's happening. I get free golf,
right.
so let's go there.
Nice.
To my left and right, we've got our very own sports dad, Judd Zolgad, and our executive producer filling in for Ross, Mr. Declan Goff. How are you guys doing today?
Is Ross a holdout? Like, what's going on here? We're like one practice into training camp. He disappears. Declan now, who, but by the way, I mean, his plate is already very full, if I may speak for him. What's going on with Ross Brendel?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like he has now skipped walkthroughs. He's like pulled the Brett Favre move, Judd. He's like, he doesn't want to do training camp.
I heard he wants more airtime. He wants more money, more free garb. Really, just demands are out of control for Ross.
It's funny because he sells himself as being like this aw shucks, gee whiz, nice guy.
Classic
and then
Minnesota
privately,
move.
he's got agents. He's got he won't wear a shirt half the time, which I have told him for the love of all that's good, Ross, go put on a shirt. I would never take mine off, but he doesn't listen.
You know what? That's all right. You need a difficult member, and I'm just glad it's not me. For once, it's just not. Most people would probably assume, oh, she's a diva. It's not me, you guys. I like to make that very clear. Let's talk a little Minnesota Vikings, shall we? We'll get to Ross. We'll get back to Ross later. I imagine he will be back with us next week, as well. Preseason, KOC has yet to win a preseason game. Who the bleep cares, right? Are we kind of at that stage? He has not won a preseason. That being said, and with joint practices becoming such a common thing amongst teams, something that they like, the scrimmages, is preseason going to go away? We're going to keep preseason? Again, in my opinion, guys, preseason, it doesn't matter. It's a great opportunity for guys to step in, show what they got, see what you have on your secondary, see what you have for backups, your depth, all of that good stuff, people making the team. But preseason games, Judd, what you got?
I think preseason is not going to go away, but I think it's going to go to 2 preseason games when they go to 18 regular season games. But, I mean, preseason, just to be clear here, because it would sound crazy to say the teams ever tried to win, aside from Baltimore, which has that or had that ridiculous streak going. But preseason is what you just said for now. It is for playing your young players. The joint practices now mean for the majority teams, they don't play their veterans at all. Like Kirk Cousins will not take, I don't think as long as O'Connell is coach here, which will probably outlast Kirk's time here, he will not take a snap. If you watch the way that the Vikings approached that game on Saturday, they were doing things that you would never do in a regular season game. Like they didn't go for 2 where it would have made sense. So yeah. The only thing about it that I think is funny is that Kevin O'Connell now has one more preseason loss than he does regular season loss, despite the fact he coached 17 games as opposed to 5 games. He's 0-5 in the preseason, and he was obviously 13-4 last year. But yeah, this is I like to get worked up about things. I don't give a damn. I'm with you completely.
I mean, John Harbaugh seems to care, right? He's like literally the only coach that's ever cared about preseason.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the Lombardi Belichick of preseason football, it certainly seems. I mean, it's fun to watch. It's fun to see rookies and like second-year guys get in. I think that's the biggest thing I try to take away from preseason football is how are the draft picks looking? How are the last year's class looking? And I think that's a decent way. And to make sure, there's no kicking controversy like Greg Joseph hitting field goals. That's all good. Those are the all every time we line up to kick, I was like, oh, this is great. Greg the leg, here he goes, and it's nails right in, no problem. So outside of that, I'm pretty good on preseason football.
Yeah, the king of the Greg Joseph fan club, if you will, I think. Do you want 30 seconds to get on your soapbox and remind people that you have been behind Greg the leg for
for
this whole
preseason
time, for
kicking out
preseason.
too.
Yeah.
By the way.
Well, I was told there was a competition. I didn't even see this other guy kick. Where was the competition? Show me. I got to get the binoculars out because I don't see any competition there from Greg the Leg. So I don't know what we're talking about.
I know. It's great. It's great. Who in preseason, especially against the Titans last Saturday, kind of stood out to you guys? What concerns do you have? I still have concerns on the O-line personally, just a little bit. But what do you guys think?
Oli Udoh scared me because I've been, Phil and I have both been singing his praises as a backup. Now, Brian O'Neill the plan is he's back. Like he's going to, I think, practice in the joint practices against the Cardinals. Obviously, going again, just with what we talked about, he's not going to play on Saturday against the Cardinals. But the full intention is that he's going to be set to start the season against Tampa Bay on September 10th. That being said, he's a big man coming off a torn Achilles. So like Oli Udoh has to be prepared to play. And I don't know what went wrong on Saturday, but that was reminiscent of Oli playing guard, not tackle. It was so bad. So that at least has to raise a red flag. Like you can't ignore that performance. I think he got beat on back-to-back sacks. He took penalties. He was just absolutely terrible. So that was my takeaway, at which at least it's worth like being like, ooh, that wasn't good. Like you might want to pay attention because again, Brian O'Neill could easily go down. And if he goes down and that's what you have at tackle and he plays like that, he's going to get Kirk killed. Mm-hmm. So that was probably my biggest takeaway. As far as the young guys went, a bunch of them or a few did not play. For instance, Mekhi Blackman did not play. I guess the biggest takeaway I've got as far as the young guys go, Dex, is Lewis Cine. Because it's just still so up and down. And I know he had a sack, and I know he led the team in tackles, which doesn't really mean a lot. Like a safety shouldn't lead the team in tackles. That's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah. But when you watch him, he's so far from being a first-round pick. He's got athletic talent, but I just really question his sports smarts and being in the right place at the right time.
I mean, there's two ways to look at it. He's definitely been a disappointment, but also he's not being asked to play out of his shoes either, right? Like it's not like they're asking him to step in and be a starting safety right away. So I'm trying to weigh a little bit of that, but it's definitely, I mean, it's been a sour taste in your mouth since he's been drafted, and the fact Kwesi traded down, he had Kyle Hamilton there. He gives the Packers and the Lions 2 weapons in return. Like it's going to be an unfortunate, and we didn't forecast it as playing out the way it has so far, but when you went back to that draft night in 2022 and said, man, you're going to give your division rivals 2 weapons, you're going to trade back, and now all of a sudden it's starting to kind of come to fruition a little bit. So I'd like to see him get a little bit more patience and time, and this time next year, maybe he is competing for a spot and he's learned a lot, but so far over the first, 18 months of his NFL career, it's been definitely a disappointment.
I think you nailed it, Judd. For me, it's kind of that IQ that's lacking a little bit. The athleticism's there, no question, but some of the moves that he decides to make, or when he just kind of diverts and goes a different way, you're kind of wondering, why is he doing that? I don't understand. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. That's not what I would have done. Of course, I'd probably be an elite NFL football player, first round pick. Overall, no certainly top in my fantasy football league, but that's just neither here nor there.
And sports IQ is so important, like sports IQ. And by the way, don't confuse smart people for sports IQ. I've known some very dumb athletes who are brilliant players and couldn't add 2 + 2. So there's a weird intangible there about certain people who are just really like, they know the right place to be. They're just really smart. And it's true in all sports. I mean, heck, Freddie Goudreau, I have no idea if that dude is smart off the ice, but one reason why Everson loves him, right, is because he's so smart on the ice. He's in the right place, that consistency. I've got a feeling that that Brandon Powell's going to make this team as a wide receiver because of that. He's in the right place. He knows exactly what Kevin O'Connell wants. And that's more important than ability. Because if you're not in the right place, I don't care how smart you are, you're going to drive your coach crazy. So it just feels like Cine is certainly not lacking in God-given ability. It feels like he is more not up to speed. And I think safety's definitely one, because you're sort of a last line there. I think safety is a definite position where if you play over your skis and get burned, they don't trust you, which is why Josh Metellus is essentially going to begin the year in the role that I think that they really wanted Cine to take. And if I'm not mistaken, he's a 6th round pick. Cam Bynum is at safety, and he was a 4th round pick. who was a cornerback before that. So like if you look at how this is shaking out, I don't think it has anything to do with Cine can't play. I think it has to do with technique and ability to identify what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Talking of other people getting the opportunity Saturday, we got to see Jaren Hall do his thing, showed flashes. We talked all about Jaren last week. I want to switch over to Nick Mullens, who again started the first half. How do you guys feel? I'm not putting this out in any negative space. I'm not trying to say this will happen. I'm not wishing this, but what if Kirk Cousins goes down at any point in the season? Can Nick Mullens lead your Minnesota Vikings to the playoff? He looks comfortable with the offense when there are these backup players. Again, preseason is completely different than the regular season, but where is our confidence level at for Nick Mullens to step in and fill in? Do you think he's like a Brock Purdy? My boy Brock Purdy, go Cyclones. Can he pull off what Purdy pulled off? Where's our confidence at with Nick Mullens?
In a word, no, I don't see that. I think Nick Mullens, look, I've watched almost all of his training camp practices, and he is a fine backup. Like I watched Sean Mannion, who Kirk was good friends with, who was the backup, supposedly supposed to be the backup going into last season. And I was like, he can't play. Like, if you have to play him, you might as well just not show up at the stadium. Nick Mullens is not a guy like that. And look, when he's playing in games, he definitely knows what he's doing. He's been around long enough to sort of fake it to make it. But if you had to play him for any amount of time, I don't see it. I just don't see it. It's a situation where I've seen him practice enough where I'm like, the arm strength really is not there. He's smart enough to get by, but could he win a game in a pinch? Absolutely. Could he take over and get you to the playoffs? In my opinion, no, he could not.
Yeah, he's fine in a pinch. Better than Mannion, better than other backup options out there. He's won games for San Francisco. But in general, if he has to start an extended period of time, like let's say Kirk suffers a season-ending injury or goes down for 2 months or something, yeah, I think they're pretty much sunk. The Vikings would be in chances of making the playoffs. So he's a capable backup. He can come in and make a spot start if Kirk is battling something week to week. I don't feel as bad about that. Depends who they play too. But in general, if he has to start multiple games, yes, that's not a good news for at least in the vacuum of the 2023 Vikings.
For sure can manage a game or two. There's no way in HE double hockey sticks he can lead them to the playoffs. Very few backups can, though. That's not even really a knock at Nick Mullens, right? Like, that's just not a position that backups are in. And again, especially with my concerns on the offensive line, the kid's dead. He's just ground into the ground. It's a rough go. Since we mentioned Cam Bynum being the fourth round, we mentioned these players that have come through that weren't necessarily top round picks. In your guys' opinion, now we might have to do a little thinking. We might have to do a little head scratching.
Oh boy.
Which player? I know, Judd. This one's for you.
It's early for that. Okay. No one told me I had to think today.
It's a Monday morning. We'll get through it. We'll help you. We'll help each other out. That's what we do here on Before I Die. Which player drafted in the fourth round or later, or not even drafted, will make the biggest impact for the Vikings in 2023?
Go ahead, Dex,
Wasey loves his undrafted players too. In case
I think we all know the answer.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ivan Pace is probably going to make the biggest one, right? He's been the one that's been most impressive. And in general, it's a position that he was able to kind of step in and steal from Brian Asamoah, which was pretty impressive because I think a lot of us pegged Brian Asamoah as a legitimate starter and going to be a fun one to watch with Brian Flores' defense. And Pace has been just playing better. Like, I don't think it's even necessary that Brian Asamoah has been playing ineffectively or he's played himself out of the spot. It's just that Ivan Pace Jr. looks that much better. So that's been cool to see. And I mean, I guess Vikings fans are used to seeing undrafted guys kind of stepping in the last second and making big impacts. But I also believe him doing it as a rookie, which Ivan Pace is doing, is even crazier. So I think Pace is probably the obviously leading favorite there from the fourth round picks and on.
Yeah. And keep in mind too, I think Brian Asamoah, if I'm not mistaken, was injured the Thursday before the Seattle game. And so they held him out of the game. And I asked O'Connell about that when they came back from Seattle. Wait, I'm sorry. The Seattle game was on a Thursday. So it was the Tuesday before. So on Saturday, I asked O'Connell about Asamoah. And at that point in time, he said that they were it was precautionary, that they were hoping to get him back for the joint practices against the Titans. That didn't happen. Asamoah didn't play in the game. So like we don't know there. And Asamoah, just to be very clear here, needs those reps. Like this is not a guy who's a veteran. He's in his second year, but he didn't start in 2022. And so he's a guy that needs to be playing. So Dex is right. Like Pace already was challenging him. And that was if he was on the field, but without him on the field now. And Jess, you're exactly right. Kwesi loves, and this is fine. And the Wilfs actually empower him to spend, so it's a good thing. Kwesi loves his UDFAs, as did Spielman, but the Vikings paid Pace a pretty penny to actually sign here. And I mean, it is tracking, unless something wild happens, it is tracking that Ivan Pace Jr. is going to start the opener on September 10th. So yeah, it's not even a question at this point that he has the potential to not only get a ton of snaps, but make the most impact. And at some point in time, you have to wonder, when is Brian Asamoah coming back?
I was just going to say, he's my starting inside linebacker with Jordan Hicks. No question. We're going with it. That's what I'm saying. September 10th, Ivan Pace Jr. Keep doing you. I love to see it.
Now, the only thing that I will say this from the press box on Saturday that I saw is, and you don't see this as much on TV, especially with how the game is shot when you're watching it as a fan. But the only thing I saw is that in the run game, where he is super aggressive and pursues well, because of his size, he can get taken out pretty quickly. So like the one thing is in run pursuit, like he has all the attributes to be good there. And I think he will make a lot of tackles there. But, if a guard comes up to the second level to meet Ivan Pace, it gets a little tough because he's not a big guy. And so he can be eliminated at times, but I don't think that's going to be seen as a demerit, because I think what they're counting on is Jordan Hicks to be the sort of bigger, smart guy there, and Pace to have that pursuit. And so I don't think that would impede him from starting.
Plus, the name Pace just lends itself to brilliance in writing, which I know I particularly love. I don't know about you guys, but right? There's just so much fun you can have with that. What's your favorite name that you've covered in Vikings history, Judd? Like, what's one name that you were just like, this is my guy? I just like writing it. I mean, even Asamoah, though, I do like that name.
Asamoah's a good name, yeah. My favorite name. Well, I'm trying to think of a creative one, but see, I don't like puns. I don't like puns. I don't use puns. I was always taught as a youngster at the Star Tribune, especially on the sports copy desk, avoid puns. There's nothing worse than like a Halloween night pun off a high school football game. So I avoid them at all costs. So I'm probably not the best guy to have like had a name, because I try and actually steer clear of those.
That's fair. Dex, you got one?
Moritz Boehringer. I mean, just like, even though the legend of the German YouTube football star Moritz Boehringer. I mean, come on, like that would have been great to hear Joe Buck call Moritz Boehringer's name. I would have loved to hear that. So probably Moritz. That's up there. I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's any other ones out there that I liked.
No. Yeah. The shocker. My favorite hockey is Marcia Show. I just love Jonathan Marcia Show. I love saying his name. I don't know why. Jonathan Marcia.
Now, can you spell it now?
I have to type this. March. Now I have to type it out. Hold on, guys.
Because Minkiewicz was my baseball one.
Marchessault. Marcia.
Good job.
Thank you. Got it.
Very nice.
To write it. It's part of the job.
Przynski and Minkiewicz.
Oh, yeah.
I eventually could spell them at the time by heart, but it took a while.
Niederreiter took a little bit, but then I got that one down. And then with Zuccarello, it's 2 C's and 2 L's. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
My personal favorite is when my phone changes things. Like Chorsky is a name that it changes to quite often for some reason. Niederreiter, a lot of things get changed to Niederreiter, but it knows it's Stahl. I can't just do regular Stahl. It has to be Stall because that's how, or Staal. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first one that I dealt with as a kid in trying to like keep score of hockey games was Cicerelli.
Oh yeah,
that took a little time too, especially when you're like 11 or something. That takes a while. But I finally got that down pat. It is amazing how the brain can adapt. Mm-hmm. Like eventually, like you can spell names where you're like, I don't even know why I can spell that. I can just spell it now because I've done it so many damn times.
Yeah, and Mark Messier, that's my other favorite one.
Messier, right?
I think it's an A. IAR?
IER. IER.
Yeah.
I have the
Don't you be
jersey.
don't you be challenging me
The
on
jersey's literally right down here too.
80s things, Pierce. Don't you come after me on the 80s. I've got the 80s, okay?
We will win. We should start keeping a tally too, because I know our Before I Die crowd has really loved the amount of hockey we have sprinkled into this show with Judd and I and Tex. So we'll start keeping a track of how many hockey references and mentions and correlations we can make this
football doesn't
season.
have as many fun names.
No, it doesn't.
Like, it doesn't have the influence of the French Canadian or the or Russia. Yeah.
Someday. Oli Udo's kind of a good one.
Especially his first name.
Yeah.
Oli.
Because his first name is, wait for it. I've got it right here. His first name is Olisameka. Olasamaka?
Not going to do it.
Last one for me is go Google the pop star Jason Derulo and actually go look up what his last name is spelled. It's in pop culture, it's just what Derulo. It is not that. It is French as hell. It's got a bunch of X's and vowels and things in it. Go Google Jason Derulo and look up his real last name. That's also a nutty one.
Jason Derulo. You got to
Exactly.
say it like that.
I should have.
We can move on.
I'm completely lost now, so let's move on.
Jason Derulo. Anyway, let's move on to comments from YouTube.
Comments from YouTube.
All right, there's no Jason Derulo comments in here, but Alfred Baxter says, just draft a quarterback next year. These quarterbacks are taking us nowhere, so the question is, when is it too early to start scouting next year's quarterbacks and superimposing them into a Vikings uniform on social media? Well, let me just say, can I answer this one right away? As you can listen to Purple Daily on Draft, the other spinoff show with myself, Tyler Fornes, and Miles Gorham, where we also break down this idea. We break down the draft from a year-round perspective. You can stay tuned on this YouTube channel also today for some other topics like that. But Judd, when is it too early to start scouting next year's quarterbacks into a Vikings uniform?
It's too late now. You got to be. You're scouting constantly, and may I suggest that the Vikings are starting to tip their hand to what they want in the formula of their replacement for Kirk. The still not announced by the Vikings, but announced by the XFL. The DC Defenders had the Offensive Player of the Year in the XFL, Jordan Ta'umu, I believe it is Tamu. I looked up the pronunciation last night and listened to like 4 different ones, and they were all different. But we'll go with that for now. But anyway, Jaron Hall and Jordan, I will call him, both have a similar sort of ability to escape pressure, get out of the pocket, create plays with their feet a little bit more. And so I'm not saying that either one of those kids is ever going to be a starting quarterback for the Vikings or any other team. But what I am saying is what it's showing me is the predisposition to what Kevin O'Connell is sort of looking for there. But yes, you are, in my opinion, you are constantly scouting. So the Vikings, the second that Kirk is allowed to go into the last year of Kirk's contract, I think that's a very big sign that this team is at least exploring options and scouting. So, yes, I would be very surprised if we asked the Vikings, hey, what are you doing about the QB position? And they truthfully said, oh, nothing. We're fine. So I think the Vikings are probably doing their due diligence right now on the entire 2023 quarterback class.
I'm going to go put my oldest, my 5-year-old, in a Vikings jersey, take a picture of him showing his arm, and you guys can guarantee he will be the future. If he turns down his NHL contract, that's, he'll have to pick between the two sports, but he could be like an Anders Lee, dual sport athlete, maybe a Joe Mauer.
Go quarterback every time. Like, no. If that kid can chuck the pigskin, forget hockey. I love hockey, but come on, Jesse, we're talking about a lengthy career. We're talking about millions, endorsements.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but for baseball, he'd be a switch hitter.
He'll just sort of be a niche player.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
I'm just saying hockey should be the last on your list because there's a lot more to be made in football and baseball.
Very true. Very true. Next question, Judd.
All right, next one here from Dan is, I think we were talking about things that were off, like, this thing is off. And his question, he's talking about.
That's not what we were talking about.
No, but I don't know the content. Ross sent me these, okay? You can take this up with Ross on the
You were here last week we were talking about mosquitoes, and I was putting off on, and Judd, for whatever reason, just has this,
mosquito off.
despises off. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Off, that brand of, and Declan here for Off mosquito spray, is otherwise known as Minnesota cologne. So the question is, worst smell, Off sunscreen or the coworker who wears too much perfume or cologne?
That doesn't. So too much cologne can be obnoxious. Too much perfume can be too. Now, I remember seeing some notes at work back in the day when I used to be at the Strib and was in the office a lot about people who actually were sensitive to that too. So like they would send out these passive aggressive notes, and they wouldn't name names, but it was very clear who did that. But if I had to have my choice, I'm taking cologne or perfume, being a little stenchy compared to Off, because I think Off smells really bad, and I especially hate Off, as I said last week, on myself.
See, I don't think Off smells that bad these days. Like it's not something I would elect to wear as a perfume to a game or anything, but like
I was gonna say,
yeah, it's not too bad now. Like the family spray has kind of like a soft sense to it.
You're right.
Sting the
It's
nostril.
better.
Yeah, but I agree with you though. I would not. People that wear too much perfume, and it's usually of an elder generation, not to come at you because I think their senses have lessened and weakened a little bit.
And men that wear too
Yeah.
much cologne. There's nothing worse than a guy my age with a couple of shirt buttons unbuttoned and too much cologne on.
Mhm.
Yes,
Nice
chain.
on.
The old man wore a chain, but there's nothing worse than a guy my age trying to run with people in their 30s, for instance, and they have too much cologne and they're just a walking cliche. But let's also not forget the most offensive thing, which is the coworker with BO who doesn't know it.
Oh, that's way worse. Yeah.
That's way
true.
worse. That's
Actually,
tough
I think this transitions really well to Before I Die because I have one.
Time now for the Before I Die crew to give us their Before I Dies.
So on the topic of bug spray, obviously the inverse there, sunscreen. Okay, so like I was at the cabin this weekend, and this alabastered Irish skin that I have to reapply sunscreen basically every hour, or I will be horrifically burned. So before I die, can we just get just one lotion that you just apply once on, and then you don't have to keep putting on the damn sunscreen so you don't get burned like me? I mean, it gets in your eyes. It stings a little bit. You're constantly worried every 35, 40 minutes, like, oh, crap, I haven't put it on anymore. I have to put on more sunscreen. Can we just get a one apply sunscreen before I die? That'd be mine for this week.
I got to know, are you using a cream or are you using a spray? What's the application process here for you?
It's funny. If I'm at the cabin, if I'm like literally shirts off and tarps off, if you will, and I'm on the end of the dock, I'm using the lotion.
Okay.
But if I'm golfing, I usually just use the spray because it's easier. And, every like third or fourth hole, I can just spray that on. And, you're not as exposed. So I use both. But I will say if I'm out in the sun for an extended period of time and I have much more things to expose, then I'm using the lotion.
Are we swimming as well? Are we reapplying after we swim? Are we getting wet?
Getting wet occasionally. Not like I'm not getting in the water a ton.
Can you tell I have children where I'm doing this?
Yes, I
constantly?
guess.
And you don't
very
want to
mother
burn
of you.
because that's bad. Now here's my question: with your, as you continue to put it, with your fair skin, do you really need to go tarps off?
Right.
Well,
I'm thinking,
but Saturday was like 95. It was hot. I have to go tarps off, or I'm now drenched in sweat. Like you got a shirt on.
Swim shirt. You do those swim
Yeah,
shirts.
yeah.
hate.
Okay, it seems to me
shirts.
that you are tempting the sunburn gods by going tarps off with your fair skin.
I'm tempting Before I die to just get the one genius to give me on Shark Tank the one apply sunscreen, okay? And I will invest in your company. Please make it happen.
Banana boats losing a lot of money.
Yes,
We're going through those sunscreens.
Well, most people don't have to though. Like to be clear, like because of your skin, that's your problem. Because most of the lotions are, I think, made to last for hours and hours and hours, right, Jesse?
Right.
So like Declan's problem is he's rightfully so paranoid because he's just got the bad skin that's too light.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a you problem, not really a society problem.
So Banana Boat's like, screw you, dude. We make that.
Definitely
Put your damn shirt back on, you and Ross. That's the thing.
You and
the
Ross.
producer, The guys who
Don't-
make this
don't
show
loop me in
go
with him.
both love to go around without their shirts on.
Don't loop me in with him. Come on, this
I
is
know.
not the same.
He sits on his couch with the shirt off, which is just creeps
Yeah,
me
I
out.
don't do that. That's so weird.
That's
the
like from a
visuals.
movie.
That's yeah.
That's a Napoleon Dynamite character right there.
You know what? I imagined Ross has definitely redone the George Costanza photo in the boxers laying on the thing. Like I
Oh,
can picture he's
God.
for sure done that.
That's
Yeah.
a great, you know what? That's a great point.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Mine is simple. Before I die, can we please get rid of weeds entirely? So I did some weeding this weekend.
Ugh.
And for the life of me, like I understand there are like squirrels. I don't love them, but I get their purpose. Like there's a lot of things that God put on this earth for a reason. And I'm like, okay, I don't, like we've got I think it's called a ferret outside that runs around, and it's like a little rat
That's not
that
good.
runs.
You should get rid of that.
Yeah, you should get rid of that one.
Well, it's too fast. I can't kill it. I can't even catch up to it. It's incredibly fast. It's like stealing bases. It's very impressive. But anyway, my point is weeds. What point do weeds serve other than to hurt my hamstrings when I have to bend over and take them out of the ground? I don't understand weeds.
No.
Like, what are they doing here?
And what kind do you have? Do you have like the clover leaf kind of one?
All
Do you have
types.
all of it. Yeah. That's the
All
worst.
types.
I
All
need
types. And
to-
plus our yards here are weird because the backyard does not get enough sun. And so like the grass will die and the weeds will try to, and it's a pain in the ass. I just want to get rid of weeds.
I get it.
before
I do need to let people know I wore shoes mowing the grass
Saw
for
your
the
tweet.
first time yesterday because I kid you not, on Friday, a kid I went to college with snapped me a picture. He didn't have a big toe anymore. It was gone. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? He's like, it was a freak lawn mowing accident. And I was like, oh my God,
He lost his big toe.
he lost. He's
Yeah.
like, we could
I'm
have
glad he
saved
sent
it.
it to you.
He could have saved it, but I didn't. And I was like,
How does
oh
he
my God,
balance?
gone.
How
It's just,
how does he balance?
Yeah,
it
of all
still
the
has like a little bit, right? Like,
That's a
but I
bad
was
one to
wondering the
lose.
same thing. Yeah, that's
I'm about
a
to
bad
say,
one
yeah,
to
of all
lose.
the toes, like that's the one guy you can't lose.
You
Give
get rid of
the
the-
pinky toe. I'll get rid of both my pinky toes for a Super Bowl. Okay, I will
Right.
chop them off, no
Yeah.
problem. But the big
Yeah.
toe, no, I need that one.
It's
I
a
like
lot.
my toes, and that's why I wear good. Well, good, Jesse. I'm glad that I'm glad that at your
felt
age
weird.
you finally learned to wear
Mhm.
shoes while mowing the lawn.
Can't promise it'll last, but it might, because that scared me right into that lane real fast. Like, all right, we're wearing shoes from now on. But before I die, I am going to make it through at least 5 innings of a baseball game with my kids in tow. I have yet to make it beyond 4. We went to the St. Paul Saints game Sunday. Great day, family day. Weather wasn't too bad. Had a fantastic time. Only made it to the 4th inning. I look forward to the day before I die when that is no longer the case. Luckily, Saints tickets obviously very reasonably priced as well. Beer not so reasonably priced. A little upset about that. A little irked about some of the
Uh-oh.
pricing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Again, I probably am just really cheap in general. I'm sure that's what most ballparks have, but I have like this thing about money, so. But before I die, that's what we're gonna do, guys.
All right, fair enough.
Fair enough. Dex, you want to close it out? I'll let you close it out this time.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button. Ross will likely, maybe, hopefully be back next Monday. We'll certainly see. We'll add a different Before I Die. We'll see if all of our toes are still intact. Hit that subscribe button for daily Vikings entertainment. This has been Before I Die.